Hello and welcome to Afterlife Topics and Metaphysics. This is Cyrus. Kind of late here right now, about 4 o'clock in the morning, just waiting to host an Afterlife University class. I thought I'd do a couple of videos in the meantime, and I know it's been a couple of days, been a little busy here in Japan, as well as with all the different types of work I do, but I didn't want to neglect you guys, so I want to get back on the video bandwagon. I can't talk too loud because actually it's quite late, and although I'm in a private room, I don't know how thick these walls are, so I don't want to wake people up. In fact, I hear somebody snoring in the room to my left, so I want to just make sure he's still snoring, because if he stops snoring, it means I'm waking him up, in which case I'm going to have to tone it down. So let me take a listen. Okay, he's still snoring, so I think we're okay. In this video, I want to talk about something that I think is pretty important, and that is the concept of what is evidence, because this comes up a lot in this field. Cyrus, show me the evidence, show me the proof. That's not evidence, this isn't evidence, I can't accept that as evidence. And this is the heart of the issues that many people have who go from being on the fence to deciding to become skeptics of these subjects. And inevitably, it gets brought up, whether it's in the comments of these videos or in debates with people who I either challenge or who challenge me in regard to these subjects. So the main point I want to make is that there is more than one type of evidence, and the evidence of an afterlife is quite enormous. I talk about this in my first book, and you can find free books like at victorzamet.com, where you will be introduced to dozens of areas of actual evidence. So why is it that some people say there is no evidence? But before we go much further, as usual, I will ask you to please hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Like the page, or rather like the video. Hit that notification bell so that you'll always know when a new video gets posted. All of this is critical to keep the channel going. Right now it's barely above water, so any help is needed if you think these topics are important. To continue. So, of course, as we know, there is scientific evidence, there is anecdotal evidence, and there is circumstantial evidence. There's a bunch of different types of evidence that we can consider in, for example, a court of law. Now, I'm not a legal professional. I can't list all the exact different types, but what I can say is that scientific evidence is only one type of evidence. Now, there are some people who are scientism advocates. One of them is known as Neil deGrasse Tyson, also known as one of the latest sort of culprits in the hashtag #MeToo movement. I think he was accused of trading, shall we say, SE-actual favors. I can't say the whole word, or YouTube might censor this video, but exchanging favors for passing papers when he was working as a professor. I don't know all the details about that, but one of multiple charges against the guy. But anyway, I'm going on a tangent. I guess the bigger point is that he's kind of a ridiculous character. But anyway, Neil Tyson went on record to say that he believes that only scientific evidence should be admitted in a courtroom. He finds it disturbing that non-scientific evidence would be admitted. Now, I find this to be disturbing, and it's a good example of scientism, which is the belief in the scientific method as some kind of a religious type of thing that is infallible. So we have to have other types of evidence for many different types of situations. Let's say that there is a scenario where there are, let's say there's 10 people in a room. One of these people kills one of the 9 others, and then this person has an accomplice. Now, there's now 7 people who witness the murder take place, and they witness the accomplice destroying all possible forensic evidence that could have been produced. So this guy is like an unbelievable professional. He's able to like melt the body down with acid. He's able to just scrape clean any fingerprints, completely eliminate the gun, also using some kind of powerful acid, and just completely dispose of the entire crime scene. Now, at the end of the day, now there is no scientific evidence left of the crime having been committed, and you have 7 people who witnessed the whole thing take place. So, should this person not go to jail because there was no physical evidence when it was all done? I think any reasonable person would say no, of course. 7 people watched the whole thing happen. So this person, by all means, should go to trial, and the jury should decide based upon that evidence of 7 eyewitness testimonies. It would take a true fanatic of the scientific method to look at a situation like that and make the argument that without at least some element of physical evidence, then even in a situation like that, they should be scot-free. Now, I find this to be disturbing. So what the scientism advocates will imply, and they often do this quite implicitly, but it's that anything that's not scientifically based is subject to scrutiny, because humans are great at deceiving themselves, humans are great at lying, humans are great at exaggerating and also creating for themselves false memories. Now, these are the same arguments that people use to discredit supernatural subjects, the kind that I talk about extensively and that are extensively documented, such as on this page. I'll just bring that up real fast while I talk, where we have dozens and dozens of PDF files of different scientific studies of everything from physiological correlations at distance, telepathy, survival of consciousness, of course, precognition, theory, mind-matter interactions, and so forth. So while many of these are scientific tests, some of them done in laboratories, especially the works of people like Beischel and Schwartz and Dean Radin, many of these can be assessed as kind of, quote, stories. So let's say somebody's in a lab and they reproduce something. Let's say somebody bends a spoon, okay? And maybe they even have some footage of it. When everything is said and done, it becomes someone's testimony. Yes, the video could be easily doctored, and the testimony could be made up. So just because it's in a journal doesn't mean that suddenly this has more weight behind it. Now it's still reliant upon a testimony. And when you think about it, almost everything really is a testimony, because when we hear about a scientific study taking place, we have to trust the people reporting the study that these things really took place. Now, what we can be sure of are the studies that we perform ourselves. So if we create a science class volcano and put the baking soda and the water or whatever and make the fizzy lava come out of it, then we can be pretty sure that this is part of a real thing that happens. But short of doing that, it seems like life itself gets very subjective. And the more you follow the sort of the playbook of the closed-minded skeptics, you'll see that you can apply their same arguments to just about everything else under the sun that you can think of. And so this is this really shows you how, I guess, flimsy these arguments are, because another great like analogy or example we can use is the moon landing. So you have people who think that the moon landing was a hoax. So this is one of those things where it's I mean, to believe the moon landing was real, you have to believe the scientists at NASA, you have to believe the engineers, you have to believe the the astronauts, you have to believe the people working in Houston, you have to believe the eyewitnesses on the ground who saw the rockets go into space. Basically, though, you have to believe these people. But it's a choice. You don't have to believe those people, in which case maybe the moon landing didn't happen. What about something that, something that's outside of your scope of knowledge, right? So, for example, I'm pretty sure CERN exists, that big underground facility in Switzerland and France. I've seen people on Reddit.com talk about it and say that it exists. There's a lot of eyewitness testimony. I've never been there. I've seen photos of it, but so what? Photos can be doctored. Maybe that wasn't CERN. Maybe it was just someone's big lab somewhere else, and CERN was just make believe so that they could get investors to put money into something. And a facility that big, nobody could actually build something that big underground. So surely it's not a real thing, is it? Right? So you can just keep carrying this argument almost to anything. So the people who say that there is no evidence of all of the subjects that I talk about, all they're doing is applying this reasoning to the area that is most convenient to them. So it can be applied to anything, but they're going to use it as a blunt instrument against the one subject that they don't like. So it's a tool, it's a tactic, and that's ultimately what all it is. So what it comes down to is, what is a person willing to objectively take seriously, and what is the limit of somebody's belief? Now, sometimes I'll meet these people who claim to be these pure saints of non-belief. I have no beliefs. I am pure. I don't hold beliefs. I only look at evidence and logic. These logic masterminds, which really all they're doing is they're just in denial. The only way you can honestly take these positions is you have to say, here's all the evidence about these subjects, whether that's astral projection, the stuff I do, or whether that's near-death experiences or mediumship laboratory experiments, or this incredible amount actually of reincarnation evidence, including physical evidence. Basically, if you want to hold a position that none of this is real or there is no evidence, you have to look at all the evidence and you have to say, I don't believe in it. That is the honest answer. And if you try to say, I don't hold any beliefs, I'm a pure, this engine runs completely on logic and logic alone. I'm a true, skeptic, true atheist materialist who, only takes seriously what true science, what real science verifies, aka what the mainstream says is possible. Really, they're just mainstream advocates. Then that is, it's completely false. I think if you want to follow logically, that's completely false. The honest answer is, you can look at all this stuff and say, I don't believe in it. Cyrus, I don't believe that you go outside of your body and talk to dead people, because that is against what my value system is. It's against what I believe is possible, and all this other stuff that I do recognize as evidence, it doesn't seem right to me, so I'm not going to buy it. And that's a great position to take, because it also means we're not going to waste each other's time trying to convince somebody of something that that they can't be convinced about. So most of these issues come from the people who claim that they don't have any beliefs, and therefore it gives them permission to just fight and fight and fight and fight and fight about the subjects, whereas usually it's best not to even bother, because if your beliefs don't line up, then there's nothing you can do about it. Now, if somebody does decide to dip their toe in the water, then there's a lot of resources about that, because at the end of the day, reality is objective. I don't believe in these ideas that everything is subjective and we create our own worlds and blah blah blah. Even if you don't believe in some element of the objective truth, does not mean that this objective truth does not exist, and that objective truth is going to be laughing at you, because just because you don't think it's there doesn't mean it's not there. I know there's a lot of quantum woo-woo principles out there. We talk about Schrodinger's cat, blah blah blah. Maybe the cat's not dead or alive until you open the box to look at it. But I'm afraid objective reality doesn't really demonstrate this way. So if something really is happening, it's really happening and you cannot escape from it. So so there is such a thing as that. And yes, somebody could potentially be without beliefs, but the problem is, unless you're all-knowing, then you'll never be able to escape the belief part of it, because nobody knows what objective reality completely is, because we have limited consciousness in our limited minds. And so without having all of the information, we have no choice but to rely upon beliefs. And anybody who says they don't have any is fooling themselves. That's it for this video. I hope you like what I have to say. You can get involved at afterlifetopics.com. I have a couple of books here if you want to delve deeper into this, Understanding Life After Death and the Afterlife and Beyond, the newest book. I've got some more podcasts and radio appearances coming up, and so you can stay tuned to hear about those types of things. As always, if you want to become basically a patron of this work and support what I'm doing, then you could sign up at Afterlife University, where we talk about complex subjects twice a week in big, in-depth classes. So just shoot me a message on here, or on Facebook, or anywhere, and I can help you enroll in that. And also that includes like one-on-one meetings with me. Any questions or thoughts, ideas, I'll reserve time, like on Skype. Anytime you want, we can talk. If you want to throw a few bucks in every month and help keep this work going, because it takes videos and the website and the books and the classes and so many different areas, and sometimes it's difficult because I still need to eat anyway. But there's no pressure. You don't have to do all that to enjoy the work I do, the channel. It's just if some people out there may want to help, but no pressure. This is still free information for everybody. That's what I care about most of all. Okay, I'll catch you guys on the next video.